What's up, guys? Long time no see. But anyway, it's a pretty good day to get back to doing videos because today the Isle of Man ended and we have two qualifiers, the Candidates Tournament, Vidit and Hikaru Nakamura. I'm happy for both of these guys for different reasons. And today I'm actually going to show you an example from Vidit's last game, which featured one of my favorite themes in chess, as you know, prophylaxis. And he just made a move that really impressed me, and I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure it out without the help of the computer. So I'm gonna walk you through my thinking process in understanding his idea. So he was white, and he played the move knight c5 here, attacking the b7 pawn. Of course, the knight can be captured, but then black has to give up the bishop pair. Obviously, white is going to be feeling pretty good about that. So Predke played bishop c6. And that walks into, the simple overload tactic, knight takes a6, which is basically, trying to win a pawn. If you take the knight, you lose the bishop. Well, you'll probably lose more than just one pawn because the a6 pawn will be really weak as well. And of course, black didn't miss this kind of simple tactic, but had something prepared. So he plays knight d7. And it turns out that the knight on a6 is kind of trapped. Doesn't have an obvious way out. I mean, you're not really threatening to capture it just yet, but at some point you will be. And here Vidit comes up with this move bishop f1. And when I was looking at this game with the computer approved of this move, so we know it's a good move. But of course the move itself is completely mystifying, right? Like, what is so special that makes the move bishop f1 better than all the other moves for white in this position? So the first things I tried to understand, like, what was black even threatening in this position that would provoke the move bishop f1? And that part I actually kind of figured out. And black is threatening this unusual move bishop f3. So let's say, I don't know, we make some random move for white, like a3, then bishop f3 will come. And basically, you're trying to remove the bishop from c6. You want to threaten the knight. You also want to threaten the bishop on e2. And after, let's say, bishop takes, pawn takes, okay, the knight's going to hang, but so is the g2 pawn, right? So that's like the nasty little point behind this move, knight d7. You're kind of avoiding the rook trade and threatening bishop to f3. So from that point of view, bishop f1 makes sense, because now if bishop f3 happens, you can actually take it, and when they take, you don't get your bishop hit on e2, right? So there's no real point to this move anymore because you can just take it and just move away. And they can take your knight, but they're going to be missing some queenside pawns. So that part is clear, but I tried to understand, like, why bishop f1 and not king f1, which actually does, something very similar. It gets out of the way of the rook, so bishop f3 is no longer dangerous. What's the superiority here? So the reason really comes into play with this move rook c8. Because, of course, black is interested in winning the knight, but in order to win the knight, he's got to protect his bishop. And now, well, we're going into some kind of advanced calculation, right? So this is not, this is not like prophylaxis for beginners, guys, for sure. So I'm going to try to slowly explain to you, like, what are the deep calculations that these players are making. And here, white has to go bishop d6. So the point is, first of all, if you have a chance, you're going to escape with your knight. You're also controlling this square. So when they do take your knight, as they will, you can take with the bishop, and you're threatening the rook, and if the rook moves, you're going to take this guy. But the thing here is that black actually has this check. So here we're starting to see the differences, bishop f1 and king f1. So there's a check. When you take, they throw in this capture. You actually have to take, and then they take back. Okay, you're not just going to be down a piece, don't worry, because you have that check on the back rank, forcing bishop d8, bishop c7. You're winning the bishop back, right? But in this position, I think black has the move, for example, rook c5, and it pins the bishop, so there's no bishop takes d8. Yeah, probably if you take on b2, the difference is that bishop takes d8 is actually quite annoying because there's actually a checkmate threat, right? So we're going to pin the bishop instead, so you can't take with the bishop. You make them take with the rook, and come here. And when I first saw this position, I was like, well, isn't this good for white? I mean, white's up a couple of pawns, and they're threatening some kind of bishop d8 check. But actually, therein lies, black's counterplay on the c file. And they're going to try to pick up one of these pawns. And, depending on where the king goes, they take one or the other. Like if the king goes up, you take there. If the king goes back, like let's say you take there. And despite the fact that white's up a pawn, black actually has a lot of play, right? Because if you save this guy, knight c5 happens, and you're threatening all kinds of things. So if you go like, something like bishop d8, king d6, and you try to get the knight, yeah, you can win the knight, but you're just not really likely to win this game because black's rook is so active. Really like the perfect rook behind the passed a pawn and also cutting off the king on the back rank. So basically this long line really explains like the flaw of the move king f1 as a solution, right? So the issue is that after king f1, rook c8, there's going to be this check on b5. So here you go again. It's the check. That's the problem. Okay, so now how is Vidit's move better? Well, he plays bishop f1. And if we do the exact same thing, rook c8, bishop d6, pawn takes, bishop takes, as you see, guys, there's no check. So black doesn't have that way out, and the best he can do is go like rook a8, but then we can take the bishop and invade on the back rank, and actually we're going to win that bishop back. And here we are quite winning because we do have those extra queenside pawns. So that's the point, guys. You're stopping bishop f3, stepping away from it. At the same time, you're not going to walk into this bishop b5 check. And after bishop f1, the best that Predke found was this move rook a8. Still not exactly threatening the knight. Bishop d6 still happened. Here, maybe Vidit could have played b3. I mean, the computer actually likes this move, despite the fact that white's not going to be up a pawn. He just evaluates this position as really, really good for white. I mean, the bishop pair, the rooks, there's beautiful harmony. I would say this rook is in a bit of a strange position. So the computer preferred this method, but I can understand, why Vidit, went for what he did. He went here. He actually wound up with an extra pawn, rook a5 here. And I'm sure he calculated out all of this, how he was going to be up a pawn in this endgame. And there's no rook a2 regaining the pawn because bishop b5 would win the knight. So black basically had to get out of the pin first. But then he uses, again, the little trick of bishop b5 to save the pawn. And eventually, I wouldn't say it was easy, but eventually Vidit won this technical endgame up a pawn. Of course, the move bishop f1 was really the key to doing so. So, yeah, sometimes it's what's going on behind the scenes is really quite deep, and this is one of like the deepest examples that I've seen when I saw this move. Like, usually you understand what the top players are doing, right? But when you see bishop f1, it's just a big question mark. It's like, why that move? And it really took me some time just to figure out what that was all about. And hopefully you guys enjoyed that whole thinking process involved in understanding Vidit's great move.